Good afternoon and welcome to Dennis Fujan, legislative candidate from District 23. Thank you, Dennis, for joining us for our virtual legislative candidate meetings. My name is Gina Ragland, and joining me today is Susan DeCamp, Volunteer State President, and Advocacy Lead Volunteers Joyce Beck and Ira Nathan. Dennis, we appreciate your taking the time to meet and discuss issues of importance to the 50-plus voter and their families in Nebraska. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be shared with AARP members across your district prior to the election. So to get us started, Dennis, if you want to start by giving us a little background about yourself and your campaign in about 5 minutes or less, that would be great. And then once we've completed that opening, we'll move into the questions. So welcome, Dennis, and thanks for being here.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for accommodating me here. My schedule has been a little rough lately, and so I really appreciate your being able to help me out. Okay, so I grew up by a little town called Malmo with about 190 people. I'm not sure if they even have that many people anymore, but it's just 17 miles from Wahoo. I grew up there, went to a small country school, and after country school, I went to high school in Prague, and we had a huge class. I think we had 26 kids in the class, and of course now the school has been combined with East Butler. So after high school, after graduation, I went into the Navy, and I spent 4 years in the Navy, trained as a jet engine mechanic, and then basically didn't do that. And so after I got back out of the Navy, I came home, and I had planned on continuing my work in jet engines and jet engine mechanics and things like that. And my father had just bought a tractor, and brand new one. And I decided I had to farm. So I put that by the wayside and took over the family farm after about 10 years. My dad wasn't ready to retire, and so I went to work at Valmont Industries. And so I worked, I think it was actually very good for me to work in a trade besides. And so I worked at Valmont Industries for about 10 years as a welder, and then into lead man positions and things like that. Just right after I got out of the Navy, I met a young lady from Prague, which is just about 5 miles away from where I live. And we got married about a year later, and we've been married ever since. We've got two beautiful granddaughters, or 2 daughters, and 4 grandchildren. And so my whole life after I started farming has been basically devoted to service to the community and things like that. I've been a lifelong member of the American Legion. I've spent 25 years as a volunteer fireman. I think the last 30 years I've been a representative for the American Soybean Association, and I've been able to travel the world doing that and represent Nebraska farmers in the soybean industry and go to Lincoln and testify on different bills, go to Washington, D.C. and visit with several committees and the Ag Committee especially, and work on farm bill problems and all kinds of issues that affect farmers. And basically, we don't go there asking for any kind of services more than we ask for bills and legislation that will not interfere with the way we do our business. And so either help us or at least stay out of the way is basically the type of things that we do. So I've been in just about every farm organization there is. And like I said, most of my life has been doing free work to help my community and to help my state and hopefully help my nation. So it's very important for me to do work that helps our communities grow and help other people that maybe don't have the ability to go in front of an audience and express our views or ask for help. So that's the kind of thing that I like to do.
Thank you, Dennis, and thanks for your time today. Thanks for sharing about your life and your work history and that sort of thing. I personally want to thank you for your service to our service for us and for keeping us safe. And again, doesn't go unnoticed. And so we really appreciate the service that you've given for our freedoms. So thank you for that. Also, thank you for being a volunteer firefighter, because I know it's a wonderful job, but it also is not glorious at times. And so we appreciate your public service for that. So We're going to move now into our comment question section, where we provided you with a set of 3 questions pertaining to the 50 plus in Nebraska. Again, these are issues that we are currently working on, mostly because these are the issues when we talk to our membership. These are things that are coming front and center. And so we're trying to expose those topics and have conversations with candidates as we move forward. Due to the time constraints, we'll try to keep them to 5 minutes or less in the answer portion. They are jam-packed questions, and by no means are we going to get into all the details. So again, just when we talk about them, just go ahead and speak from what your experience has and what you might be looking to do as we move things forward. Our first question, it talks about, or comes from health, caregiving, and home and community-based care, and Joyce Beck is going to take that. So go ahead, Joyce.
Thank you, Dennis, for your time. And I thank you for your dedication to the field of agriculture in Nebraska, because we both know how important that is to Nebraskans. 84% of Nebraskans over 45 say that staying in their home as they get older is extremely important to them. Home and community-based services and area agencies on aging become important assets to caregivers as they care for their loved ones. Home base not only meets the needs of their loved ones, but it also provides relief for an already strained long-term care industry. So I have 2 questions for you, Dennis. The first one is, what would you do to protect and/or expand the home and community-based programs, particularly recruitment and retention of a sufficient workforce and an adequate funding for the programs and services that older Nebraskans and their families rely on? My second question is, what would you do to support the 179,000 unpaid family caregivers in Nebraska?
Well, and to give you an answer to your question, I don't have one. But by the same token, this is the kind of thing that I need to visit with people like you to help me out and help me understand the problem more. Even though I do have, my mother was faced in her older age to needing healthcare support. And so she was able to get that because of people like you or your the services that you advocate for, especially. My father-in-law right now I think he's 97 years old, and he's in a care center. And so they're not getting home care, but they're getting health care. And so I know that is part of your concern as well. So anyway, my short answer to your question is, I need to consult with folks like you to help me understand how we as a legislator can support you and help you. And the things I need to understand is, number one, what kind of care do we need, and how are we supposed to support that? Where is the revenue supposed to come from to do these kind of things?
Thank you, Dennis. And just to kind of piggyback on some of the stuff that Joyce is saying, and to go back on your questions, and this is a very large area and of work and topic that we are working on. For instance, the caregiver piece, this past legislative session, unanimously, the legislature did approve a caregiver tax credit bill that actually, again, it's non-refundable. So it's for people who are contributing to taxes. But they're caring for a loved one in their home, and they're paying it out of their pocket for those people to remain in their home. And so it's usually a son, a daughter, a spouse, whoever that might be. But it's actually the legislature has now provided a tax credit of up to $2,000 for regular caregivers and up to $3,000 if you have someone you're caring for that has dementia or is a veteran. And again, that by no means touches even close to what the expenses are that caregivers are paying out of pocket. But really the theory there is finding a way to support caregivers, because they are the unsung heroes who are the backbone of our long-term care system. And they are truly the ones that are allowing people to age in place at the lowest level of care. We know not everyone can age in place at home where they may want to be. And at some point they do have to go to a facility for more care. But as Joyce said, 84% of Nebraskans, when we polled them, want to remain in their home at the lowest level. And so unpaid family caregivers is one part of that. Home and community-based services is also another. And again, it's the home care workers, anybody that we can bring into the home that actually provides some kind of leverage for someone to stay at home. And sometimes that may just be as simple as someone needs to come set up their medications. Someone needs to do a health monitoring visit with them to help them stay on task. Because what we're finding is oftentimes people don't need the higher levels of care that they may be currently receiving. They may just need something simple that allows them to stay in their homes at that level of care. Of course, the revenue question always becomes the thing, and we are very cognizant of that. Obviously, the state's budget, it's very limited and will continue to be limited, especially as we work through the property tax thing. So I think there's lots of ideas and things out there, and certainly as you get into the legislature, I definitely think this would be another conversation we'd love to continue to have with you. But the sole purpose, again, a lot of it is because we hear from people they want to stay in their homes, and our aging population continues to skyrocket in the state, and we have a limited workforce. All of those things kind of play together of what things can we do to provide that support that's needed to allow those things to happen.
Well, I think as a legislature, the best thing I can do is listen to you.
Absolutely. And we appreciate that, the open door. And definitely as you get to the legislature, we want to have more conversations with you. So I appreciate your frankness and honesty, and most importantly, for being respectful in the sense that you would sit down and be able to visit with AARP on things moving forward on different proposals. So thank you for your candid answer on that topic. Our second question, we're going to move over into a little bit different space now of consumer fraud, exploitation, and protections. Susan DeCamp's going to take that and give you a little bit of background, and I'm assuming you're going to be familiar with a lot of these issues because they are hot out in society right now. So Susan, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Gina. Hello, Dennis. It's nice to have you with us here today. So scammers are increasingly targeting older adults with scams, such as wire transfers, gift card scams. You've probably heard of the grandparent scam, and other scams involving theft of real property, houses and other real property. Nationwide, the average victim of elder fraud lost nearly $34,000 due to these crimes in 2023. And in Nebraska, the FTC showed that there were 4,643 fraud reports made in 2023. Nearly 9 in 10 consumers agree that lawmakers need to do more to protect consumers from fraud and scams. So with that in mind, our question is, and it's a two-part question, consumers lose billions of dollars each year to online, financial, property, and other types of fraud. What will you do to ensure that Nebraskans are protected against fraud and deceptive business practices and provide opportunities for redress to victims of fraud? Would you support, 1, enacting laws to require merchants that sell gift cards to post notices regarding fraud? 2, enactment of a consumer fraud restitution fund? Or 3, implementation of preventative or corrective measures to assist in combating owner and seller housing impersonation fraud?
Well, so first of all, I'm very aware of this kind of thing happening because I think I get 2 or 3 emails a month at least, or maybe more, telling me that I just need to send a few dollars in so that I can recover some of these millions of dollars somebody in Abu Dhabi has or something like that. And so I do know that it happens all the time. My wife recently got a call from a young man, and it sounded like a child talking, telling him that he was in jail, and Grandma, you need to send me some money. And my wife told him, well, you need to stay in jail. but the whole, okay, so enacting laws to merchants to sell gift cards, that sell gift cards to post notices, and I don't know how much good that's going to do, although I think anything you can do to make sure that we educate the consumer, no matter who you are, that these kind of things are happening, is always good. Maybe the person selling the gift cards maybe could say something if they notice something happening, but I think that might be a lot of responsibility to put on maybe an 18-year-old kid that's running the cash register. So I'm not sure that's the best method. But education definitely is a good avenue to go down. And I think I would support something like that. I guess I'd have to read the bill or visit with people as the bill is getting put together to understand what the ramifications of any bill that you would write would be. But just having something that informs the consumer, I think, is a good idea. Enacting a consumer fraud restitution fund, I guess there's another situation where you have to try to figure out where the revenue for that kind of thing is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And implementation or preventive corrective measures to assist combating fraud. Again, these types of things are definitely something worth exploring. And I think as these type of measures would be put together, we just have to make sure we do it properly so that there aren't unintended consequences.
Okay, great. Thank you for your insight on that.
Thank you, Dennis. And yes, this is an area we've been exploring. We've had some legislation will continue because, again, fraud is with the new AI and all sorts of things. Scammers are getting more creative in how they are capturing people's information and such. So again, appreciate the openness to have conversations as we move that forward, and definitely appreciate your thoughts on that. The last question, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just happen to remember not more than about 6 months ago, my father-in-law, who I told you about, did fall for one of those schemes, and luckily my brother-in-law was able to get in front of it and stop it. So he actually did not lose any money, but it came real close to home.
Absolutely. And that's the other thing. It doesn't discriminate based on anything. I mean, we have heard so many different types of stories from, it doesn't matter if you're educated or not, as far as having an advanced education. I mean, the targeting, they're very creative in how they reach out to people, and it's very believable. And oftentimes the threats that come along with that, it's a very scary situation. And so we're just looking at ways that we can be helpful moving forward to stop some of that. And AARP does have a fraud watch network where we do provide education and outreach to consumers across the United States. And I have a specific program here in Nebraska. So also work with the Attorney General's office and many other entities on those things. So again, it's a large, big issue. It is a nonpartisan issue, which is another area and space that we've been happy to be in and working across the aisles with everyone on the issue. So appreciate your thoughts on that as well. Last question, go ahead, Dennis.
Many of our older citizens have a big heart and they want to help. And that's the people that get preyed on.
You're absolutely correct. And isn't that sad? And yeah, it's unfortunately the truth, but very sad. Our last question then, Dennis, we're going to switch another space here in what we call livable communities. And again, our motto and the work that we do oftentimes centers again off of helping people stay in their homes, because that's what we hear that they want to do. So Ira Nathan is going to take that last question again, livable communities, of helping people stay in their homes and communities. So go ahead, Ira.
Okay, thanks, Gina. Dennis, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for spending time with us. Let me start off with some background. Nebraskans over 65 are the fastest growing segment of our population. And research shows that most of them just want to remain in their homes and communities as they age. Now, as housing costs continue to increase, older adults are unable to find housing to meet their needs when they're trying to downsize, and thus they're being pushed out of their communities and their homes that they've lived in for many generations. So have a couple questions. The first one is, what would you do to support, incentivize, and ensure the creation of affordable and diverse housing options, such as accessible dwelling units, intergenerational housing, manufactured housing units, or maybe townhomes. And the second question is, will you fight to ensure that the homestead exemption program is maintained and protected to ensure that older Nebraskans that qualify continue to have access for tax relief that allows them to age in place? So we'd be interested in your comments.
I'm going to try to answer that second part of your question first, because I think, we have many individuals as they get older and get onto a limited income Social Security or pension programs and things like that. With our property tax system the way it is, it takes a lot of money just to pay for property taxes, let alone try to pay expenses for living and things like that. And so we definitely need to protect this homestead exemption program for people like that, especially. I also think maybe, I guess I don't know what else can be done besides protecting that homestead exemption program there. As far as that 65 and over community growing rapidly, I'm part of that population as well. And so I understand that there's definitely changes in store for all of us. You're not producing the income to be able to support a large home, and you want to move to a smaller home, and then you maybe you sell your existing home and then move into a smaller home, and you get stuck with taxes that you gain by selling your other home. I don't have a lot of good answers for you on this question. And as far as trying to develop communities, I think you have to incentivize the community to make things like that happen. It can't all be government financed or government inspired. It has to be inspired by the local citizens. And so we need to, I guess, encourage and maybe make some kind of tax incentive programs for people that can be the developer of situations like this, communities like this. It takes private industry and private development, I think, is part of the answer to the question, rather than relying on government services all the time.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dennis. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dennis. And again, this is another space that AARP has been working in conjunction with other entities across the state. And I think, that's the correct thing that we're looking at, is how do we incentivize builders and cities and municipalities to do all of this without having so much government intervention? Because I know, again, the concern always becomes is you don't want to take away the local control and that sort of thing. We're just trying to find ways, and you had a really great example. We have people over 65 who are retired, living in 5-bedroom ranch style homes that no longer need that large space. But especially in our rural communities, the problem that we hear from people is there's nowhere else for them to go when they want to downsize to something smaller. And the other part of that is when that space is not opened up and unoccupied, we don't have young families who might need all that space with a lot of children or more children to come into our places and buy those homes. And so we're just trying to find ways, again, that we can work with cities, municipalities on the zoning pieces, but find some incentives for builders and whatnot, or that missing middle piece where, again, they're not to the point where they need to go to an assisted living or any type of facility where they need that extra care. They just need something that steps down to a smaller downsized type of housing. So there is a legislative resolution in the Urban Affairs Committee that we've been working on with a group with Senator Armendariz, and we'll continue to keep working as we move into the next session. So again, I hope you're open to new ideas and looking at that and having those kinds of conversations about what else can we do, again, to fill in some of those missing pieces of housing for people that do want to downsize But also, again, the other big question that's always been is what is affordable housing? And I think that definition just varies all over the place. And so I think the legislature is looking to try to find ways to define that. So a huge topic and a huge subject. And, again, I hope we'll be able to continue to have conversations as you move into the legislature on that.
Well, and we also need to incentivize building for new families and new homes too.
Yep.
And in order to do that, we have to have business that can support
Absolutely.
workers.
Mhm.
And if you have business that can support workers, then we need to have childcare. So
Isn't it funny how it all fits together? And when one of those
Yes,
pieces is missing, we have a really big problem. So you get it. And I appreciate that very much. So Dennis, that comes to the conclusion of our questions that we had for you today. Before we do close out, I just want to give you back just a few more minutes of your time to talk about in closing, what some priorities you have for serving in the legislature. If you have specific issues that you plan to work on or address during your time as a state senator, or if you have committees you want to be on. Again, what are some final thoughts that you have before we close out the conversation?
Well, I guess, my priority has got to be property taxes. I think everybody gets affected by property taxes in some way or another, whether you actually own or are you renting. And so property taxes definitely that problem has to be solved. In order to solve that problem, I think we have to find a solution that's going to not make one segment of society supply the revenue, say for instance, for our local government spending. While local government needs to be supported locally, I think there's certain issues that belong to the state and certain issues that do belong locally. I have, community development is something too that is very important to me. I see small towns dying, and my small town of Prague or that small town of Malmo, they have maybe one or two businesses at the most. And so basically they don't support too many families as far as being able to support a lifestyle or support their family. They have to go outside of the community. And so we need to try to make sure that we do something to help our smaller communities grow and prosper. There isn't too much else. There are so many issues that I have become aware of since I started running for this office. It's way more than I expected. By the same token, it's also a lot more exciting than I thought. And so I'm really excited. I'm really hoping that I can get down there to Lincoln and be part of a solution instead of part of the problem. I've never been somebody that sits back and complains about a problem. I try to move forward and be part of the solution. And so that's what I'd like to do. And so visiting with folks like you and the folks upstairs at Kissel and Coho, all I'm asking for is your support. And if you can help me financially, that's great. If you can't, that's okay. I understand. But fundraising is something that's really important with this endeavor. You have to be able to get your message out to the public, and money helps.
Thank you, Dennis. And I will, just for disclaimer, and AARP does not have a PAC, so we aren't able to financially contribute to campaigns. We just bring the power of the people, in which, again, with our membership, we have roughly 180,000 members statewide. And so, and that's why, again, these issues are so important, and power of the people is also a critically important piece. And the 50+ voters are the ones that vote. And so, again, that's why we're very grateful that you have taken the time to visit with us today and listen to us and have a conversation, and certainly will appreciate as you get to the Capitol working with you moving forward on these issues and many others that what we've been working on. So I want to thank you again, Dennis, for taking the time to visit with us. I know you've got a busy schedule. Appreciate you squeezing us in. We wish you the best with your campaign. And again, thank you so much for meeting with AARP today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for accommodating me.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you, Dennis.